Let's look at another case with question marks in the type. So here, as we've already seen, the type checker is going to decide this lambda so far has type T1, arrow T1. Meanwhile, the argument over here, we've seen how the type checker will decide that this has type num, arrow num. What happens for applications is that we need to make sure that this argument type matches the argument in the function. And so the type checker will decide that T1 must equal num, arrow num. And then in this case, overall, we have num, arrow num for the overall expression. And that should make sense because this is the identity function, and we have a num, arrow num function going into that, so we get num, arrow num overall. But what this example illustrates is how question marks and expressions far from each other eventually lead to an overall conclusion about the type of the program. It's this plus way over here that forced this question mark to be num, arrow num. Here's another example. Here I've got a question mark for y, so that means y has type T1 for some T1. 7 has type number, and now we're kind of stuck compared to our old rule of application. Because our old rule would say make sure this function expression y has an arrow type. T1 is not an arrow type, or at least not yet. Somehow we have to add the constraint that T1 is an arrow type and that number is the argument in that arrow. The way we do that is we make up a new type variable, T2. That way we can say that T1 must be some arrow type, and by the way, the left-hand side is num because that's what we got for its argument, and the right-hand side, the result type, that's T2 because that's the one we just made up. And then overall, this is going to say give me a function that takes a number and returns a T2, and that function overall will return a T2, which is whatever that function returned. So you see the overall strategy here was whenever we have a function call, whenever we have an application, make up a new type variable like T2 to stand for the result, and then you can set up an equation between the type of that first function, the made up type, and the type of the argument.